I think that I haven't really formulated, but I think the thing that we make a mistake is when we're comparing the inductive inference. I totally agree with you on the inductive reasoning. There's a great book by Eric Larson called The Myth of AI. Dr. Woods, if you follow the safety critical stuff, is all about a guy named Peirce, who is the father of inductive reasoning. That's their argument, so they're smarter than me. But he had a lot to do with inductive reasoning, but that's not my 2%. My 2% is that I think the mistake we make, and I'll do a plug for my book. I wrote a book about the history of AI. I tried to have no opinion about AI, except I was sort of forced by Dr. Woods to write an epilogue where I kind of wanted me to put my opinion in it. And it was about inductive reasoning. But the mistake that we make is when we're comparing this inference as something other than a tool, right? I think if you go back to like the calculator, the stethoscope, even the printing press, these ideas that it's going to make us dumber. I don't think that happens. Now, could there have been an alternative path? Yes. But so I think we make a mistake when we say that, or sort of imply that an engine like an LLM that uses probabilistic inference is a danger, other than it's just a tool, because I think our sort of gravity is toward the human condition. I'll say one last thing, that is, I totally agree that there has to be a collaborative human struct, but I do think sort of like demonizing, and I'm not saying you demonize it, but demonizing inductive reasoning as an inference, as a tool, that is clearly doing some incredible stuff right now.
I think demonizing is the wrong word. I differentiated between inductive reasoning and abductive reasoning. So inductive is valuable, but it carries dangers with it, right? Because there are the dangers with abductive, as I pointed out, are prone to conspiracy theories. Yeah, the dangers of inductive is a confusion of correlation with causation and some other dangers as well. So I pointed out the dangers in both cases, all right? We need both in place, right? The interesting thing is human beings evolved to hallucinate. It's actually how we make decisions. So we do constant micro-hallucinations, but we've evolved the capability in social context as well as individual context to determine what's a useful hallucination and what isn't. AI has no such discrimination, nor is it likely to gain it. The other issue is the evidence of cognitive decline is now irrefutable. Right? It's not like and we see this. I mean, if you give people tools, they lose physical capacity they had before. Yeah, the mental capacity is even more significant, and we can see that. Most of us thought it would take years. It actually takes weeks, right, before you get significant cognitive decline. Now, having said that, a research project we're looking to start at the moment is neurodiversity seems to work differently. So, for example, I'm severely dyslexic, right? I can't pronounce words from text. I can't remember more than 3 letters between one screen and the next before I have to do it. And I use 3 different colored pens to read a book, because normally I scan a book 2 pages at a time. I see patterns. So to read it line by line, I've developed coping mechanisms, all right? So there are things I literally can't do that actually an LLM can do very well. Right, so I'm not replacing a capability with an LLM, I'm augmenting a lack of capability with an LLM, and the capabilities I've got to see patterns and put novel connections together therefore get augmented. Somebody who isn't dyslexic who uses an LLM is going to lose the capacity they've got. And I think we're not looking at enough, because we're rushing into this stuff blindfold. Nobody's doing the research before they commit, and the changes are irreversible. So what we got the tech bros who are offering us a utopia, but they can't tell us what the utopia is, which means it probably ends up as a dystopia. So there's a cautionary element to this that we're not bringing into the system. We're rushing into it too quickly.
Let's hand it to Mandi for perspective. You got any follow-up, hot take? Are you getting smarter or dumber with AI in your? Because like your talk was wicked smart, and it was all about using AI.
So I had a discussion with one of my marketers, and her feeling on all this was she has an MFA. She's writing technical marketing materials. So in her spare time, puts together zines and does this other stuff and does some very smart work on the side. But when we're creating content for our product, do we know if anybody's going to read it? Are they going to engage with it with any kind of intellectual rigor? Or are they going to engage with it with any kind of passion? Probably not. If they're going to skim it, they're going to ask another LLM to read it for them and summarize it. So her feeling is, if it saves me time to use the LLM to generate the stuff that somebody else is going to use an LLM to summarize for her, she's going to do that. She's an amazing writer. But the place where her output goes is not to be received as amazing writing. So from that perspective, I do see the dumbing down of things and the middle ground, and like the LLMs are created to shave off the interesting bits. They shave off the individuality, they shave off the humor in many places, which I find disturbing because I like things that are funny, and give you that safe, milquetoast middle ground for the things they create.
The corporate blandness, as I like to put it. They want things a particular flavor of beige, which is why me and Dave get in trouble on a regular basis. Eb, you got a follow-up there?
So I have 2 points. The first point is there's definitely data on the decline. And secondly, one of my favorite podcasts is You Are Not That Smart by David McRaney. He wrote How Minds Change or something like that. He has a few interesting people come on there from time to time. And this last edition actually had these researchers who've begun to notice that we are going through cognitive surrender, which is people are just handing off their thinking to the LLM. And then I just want to ground this in sort of what we're seeing at work, which is people ask the LLM to generate content. They feel very good because it generated 17, 18 pages. They don't read it. They don't look at it. And then they shoot it and say, hey, here's a case for why we should do X over Y. Now, you might say, like, the human needs to be smarter than that. But remember that we shape our tools and our tools shape us, right? Like, it's reducing the friction for us to think. It's making it harder in many instances for us to even think critically at times. So some caution needs to be taken here.
Let me do one thing. The one thing that sort of drives me nuts, not just this panel, is when the argument is that AI is reducing critical thinking. And if you've seen any students out of any higher ed, middle school, I don't believe we're teaching critical thinking to most of the people. So blaming AI on the loss of critical, I mean, the point you made is critical thinking should be part of every curriculum. And then if you're a critical thinker and you're using AI, you're not just asking it to write an essay. You're literally using a critical thinking dialogue with AI to help you understand what you're doing. And in which case, I think it's a phenomenal tool. It's a tool. It's not a human replacement.
If I can jump in,
Can I just pick up on this, because there's a key feature on this, all right? You're right, we have been dumbing down education from critical thinking and original thinking to text absorption and text regurgitation. And that's what we've done with consultancy as well. So LLMs are outperforming humans because actually that's what LLMs do well. So we've already reduced it. Now, there are 2 key periods of age for cognitive development. One is up until about 4 or 5, which is where you get most of the, for example, if you don't get the right sort of nurture during that period, you'll never develop the capability to fly an aeroplane. It's that critical. All right? Language acquisition more or less disappears as a natural process at 3 or 4. Cognitive development is between about 7 or 8 and 19 and closes down females' early 20s, male mid-20s. So if you don't get the right experience or patterns during that period, you can never recover them. Yeah? So those of us who are older using LLMs have already got that capacity, so we got the judgment. We're now really concerned is we've lost an entire generation. We now know that if you spend your time on screens, and this is epigenetics, the fact that whether DNA is activated or not, means we've created an autistic generation because autism, or the tendency to autism in DNA, is rewarded by screen interaction. So the issue for me, and it's like I'm talking about neurodiversity, we're making broad statements about AI and humans, when actually it's much more nuanced than that. Age matters, background matters. Now, To give my favorite example, when I went to school at the age of 11, all right, well, grammar school, we were allowed to wear long trousers for the first time. This is British, well, you had to walk to primary school in midwinter, all right, in shorts, all right. This is kind of like, it's the old public school tradition, all right. So I now wear long trousers. I walk to the front of the class and I'm given a card by the teacher. And it says, "You support capital punishment." Yeah, my mother was then leading the campaign in North Wales to abolish capital punishment in the UK, which we've now done, all right? So the teacher has been wicked. I had to speak for 7 minutes without preparation for something I profoundly disagreed with. We did that every week from the age of 11 to 18. So you never knew what you were going to get hit with. It meant you read everything, because you never knew what was going to happen. And you became critical through the process of education. You weren't taught to be critical. The process made you critical because you were arguing from different sides. And my issue at the moment is we need to start, LLMs are hugely powerful, but they're not the only type of AI as well. That's the other confusion. We need to recognize that there are some tools. We don't let kids at the age of 5 play with blowtorches, for God's sake. And, well, no, it's a bad idea, right? Don't work that one out. And we shouldn't, let's not talk about weapon systems, all right? And people who shouldn't be allowed to play with those, all right? The fact remains, all right, that we've got to be very careful about what tools people are allowed to use at what age and what experiences they have and how they do it. And the lost generation, because we've now got a lost generation, we're looking at how we create the trios method. So we link people with people who are older, with people in power in combinations on that, because we have lost that generation.
Agreed with everything said so far, and I still want to come back to the generation who might have received some critical thinking training to point out the fact that the day-to-day realities of organizational life, when aided with these ALMs, make it hard to engage critical thinking. When you're under duress to deliver something in 3 hours that might have taken a week before, and now you've got something that can create this draft and abstract and you can send it out, what do you think you're going to do? Dave spoke about energy gradients. Like, we will optimize for the thing that causes us to expend the least energy. So again, I'm not blaming the tool in isolation because it is a tool. I am acknowledging the fact that many of our conditions that we find ourselves in actually work against all these things. So we can say, and this is where these conversations get interesting, because we locate responsibility in the individual and say the reason it's wrong is potentially because human beings as individuals are not doing what they should do. I'm suggesting that it's bigger and broader than that, and that these tools are just not helping us in that way.
So can I just, like you talked about Boeing and the MCAS system. That had nothing to do with AI. So this condition that AI is now forcing us to produce things faster and it's causing to some decay of, that's been going on. Diane Vaughan wrote a book called, came up with this idea of normalization of deviance, which described the problems that NASA had with the shuttle accidents, right? So these pressures, again, I don't disagree that there are dragons all over AI. But I think we conflate, or we sort of skew the argument that when we say things like that AI is getting us to produce more and sort of weaker strategy, that's a human condition. That's an organizational behavior condition of most organizations.
But it's reducing any friction that we had, and we must acknowledge that. It's an accelerant.
Yeah, but we've had automation for, like, that reduced friction. RPO was a frictionless, terrible.
You can't get any. We can't get any traction if we don't have a little friction. So if LLMs are making it too slippery, it's not helping anyone. I did want to throw out a question to bring us back on, like, the theme, and I wanted to toss it to Mandi first, because I'm personally amused by this. I've got a number of mentors throughout the community. Some of them are here today. I'm also big on the platform engineering take and aligning DevOps practices earlier in projects with SRE practices. Once you hit prod and have been out in the world, I raised this question on the reboot, living and working in real life, and this level of abstraction that platforms are supposed to provide, that it's supposed to make the technology accessible to people that aren't necessarily experts in the domain, but permeable enough that if they're interested, they can learn more about it. And the comment that came up from one of the Lean Coffee platform groups I hang out with they're weekly, was one of the folks that got started was told he would never really understand systems because he didn't learn on punch cards. So he's never really going to get it. I have a little bit of a digital engineering background, so I've messed with TTL logic and digital gates and logic probes. I'm really good at Boolean algebra, which a lot of people just don't ever end up studying.
Why?
It's awesome. It's like great stuff. So my question is, where is that line of abstraction shifting? What do beginners and folks need to focus on now? If you're a vibe coder coming in, I'm not going to tell you to learn punch cards, and I guess not digital gates either, but where's the foundation they need to enter at is a question I really need the answer to. No pressure.
Does anybody else hang out on R DevOps or RSRE on Reddit? Oh, you lucky people, you miss out on that. This question probably comes up 4 times a week. I will say that nobody is dancing with Mr. Proper anymore. Like, nobody needs to be building kernels and all that kind of stuff. I can't tell you the last time I built a kernel. Not that I don't sometimes miss that. But I have so many beefs. Which beef to pick? So, like, we're still looking at... Words are tough because, like, I don't want to offend anybody, but at the same time, I have very offensive thoughts about this.
No, you can be offensive. It's like within the code of conduct.
Yeah, right? I still want engineers. I'm no longer working in operations. I still want engineers to have some fundamental understanding of where their shit is going to be deployed. And what we see, and it's no shame to folks who wanted to better themselves or get a better career via boot camps and some of these, like, 6 weeks to success kind of things. I appreciate that. It takes a lot of grit to go through those, but you miss out on all of those things. And it's our fault, those of us who are still in the industry, and I've been here 27 years or whatever, we have never gotten to a place where we are good at relating to the new kids what this looks like in production. Part of that is we have been abused. Like, if anybody in operations has so much PTSD from the bad old days, pre-cloud, when everything was just thrown over the fence and you're just like, it's Friday at 4 p.m. and the engineers are having a LAN party in the next room and you're trying to launch their shit and it doesn't work. And they're blaming the network, and it's like, no, it's because your code is garbage. Like, we need you to look at this, but it's operations' fault. Like, and so we kind of retracted into ourselves and have not intentionally gatekept, but, like, put a shell around that knowledge and protected it in too much of a way. The abstractions relate to that. Trying to get engineers to, and I will say application developers, trying to get application developers to engage with the environment where their code must live in production and create value is very, very difficult. They are very, very resistant to it because it's messy and it's dirty and it doesn't look like fun anymore. And they see us with our gray hair and our wrinkles and our grouchy faces, and they're like, well, those people are not having any fucking fun at all. I don't want to have anything to do with what they're doing. So we look at stuff like Backstage, and we're guilty of this as well. Like, it is a way of trying to translate what is reality in production into something that engineers are willing to engage with. That we're trying to meet them at a place where they're the sort of boundaries of their knowledge without pushing them away too much, because we need them to come closer. And I have never worked anywhere where there have not been hesitant on that. And I'm at PagerDuty, I was at Chef, I was at AOL for a long time, and before that I was in the government, so I did federal work. So, like, any of those kinds of environments, it's been very, very challenging to push folks boundaries of what their stuff needs to do and how it's going to get there.
So let's give a follow-up to that, and then I think we'll break for lunch at that point.
So
Sound
a couple
good?
of things. I actually wrote a chapter for ITEL which said no software engineer should be allowed out without a training in ethics. And I still stand by that, and I think that chapter is available, and that's a problem, right? I mean, remember I said that SenseMaker came from Genoa 2 and Palantir came from, Tia? Well, no, it was interesting. John decided we should put the two together, and I had a dinner with Peter Thiel in Sweet Georgia Brown's, and I got up after half an hour and said, "You're not even immoral, you're amoral, I can't work with you," and walked out. And the problem, but amorality is a big issue for tech. It's not an immoral decision, you can handle that. It's an amoral decision. It's an inability to show empathy, right? And I think that's a big issue. On the cognitive aspect of it, we know that people who use slide rules are better at assessing whether a mathematical result is right or wrong than people who use calculators. Yeah, slide rules was really good training for anybody. How many people use a slide rule? Yeah. It was kind of like, because it got away the mechanics of the calculation, but you had to have a sense of the right power of 10. And the abacus guys are even better. And I think this is kind of like a balancing act. Are there some skills that we need to go back to, like the US Navy retraining people in sextants? Because we know it has cognitive advantage. Yeah? I think Apple here have been really clever. Apple have worked out, when nobody knows what the hell AI is going, why would they throw all their capital into it? They can just sit around and wait and pick up the pieces in a year or so's time. And what Apple have always done is to get rid of the hardware-software distinction. That was why, Microsoft was software, IBM was hardware. Apple said it doesn't bloody well matter to a consumer. If we get the granularity right, and you can see that, then we can actually allow for co-evolution between technology and humans, which is what you want. But that requires much more finely grained objects. And I think with the CEO appointment they've made, you can see them going down that route. And I think that's really interesting as we watch for that pattern to develop. But I think the bigger issue is what happened in the 80s. So scientific management, which everybody in Agile decries, but actually scientific management was actually very effective. Nobody's actually read Taylor. They don't realize what came before. And also, I've had this when I talked with Peter Drucker, the point he made is that there was an apprentice model of management. What happened in the 80s is the engineers took over. Engineers do not like ambiguity. So we got business process re-engineering, we got outcome-based targets, everything had to be designed, everything had to be measured. Yeah, and the outcome-based targets produce perverse incentives to achieve the target, even if it's the wrong thing to do. And one of the things we've argued from a complexity science point of view is we're bringing back a judgment and apprenticeship models because we know that information is more than digital. Yeah, the ability, human beings can sense an analog instrument on a car better than a digital instrument, right? And we really need an examination. Companies need to be spending time on this because the competitive advantage is not going to be the people who do digital better than everybody else. It's the people who realize its limitations and do stuff on the other side of the boundary as well.
That's great.
I'm going to drop a stink bomb, and then I'm going to move on. Which the question I would propose was the printing press a cognitive transition or a physical transition? Drop that. Just that would be my question. When you say like that's physical and that's cognitive, I would say that argument there was cognitive. But I want to move on to answer your question, which is the punch card thing. So Josh Long, if you don't know who Josh Long is, he's probably written more books on Spring.
Starbucks man.
He's a Java. He's a quintessential, one of the best, other than Rod Johnson, who created the Spring company. Probably nobody knows more about Spring than him. I'm watching him at a Java meetup here about a month ago, and he's just flying through. People are like, "Hey, you didn't know, no, and I'm thinking about the novice coder now with this sort of code assistance, and so I grabbed him, and we did a podcast together, and I wanted to ask him, like, what is it essential for somebody to know what he knows to be able to code at a bank today?
He presented here one year, DevOps Days Atlanta, and the feedback we got is it was intimidating because how can I ever possibly get that good and intelligent?
His answer as of like 3 weeks ago was, I have found that a high percentage of the things I do, I can use code assistance. So like there's a guy that like is at the pinnacle of sort of Java, Spring, and enterprise software. And he didn't say I completely use it because he said the really hard problems, I'm better at it than AI. So but that sort of mixture of like, you don't have to be, that you can skip some of the abstractions. And I agree with you 100%, right? You still have to have the skills to be we've been terrible. That was Damon used to scream this all the time about how Damon Edwards, one of the other co-founders of DevOps, would say that, why don't we talk about after the code gets into production? And we've been terrible about that. My only point is that I think there's a world where a lot of the work we do, even for people like Josh Long, or if you watch Adam Jacob 2 years ago, he was vehemently against AI assistant code, and now he's almost 100% on board. So I think there is something, and this is the way the world goes, right? In some ways, we can't, we can sort of like it's a reality check that code assistance is here. It's lingua franca right now. So
I think when you understand what the code or any artifact for that matter that the LM is spewing, and you have a level of expertise, it sort of smooths this conversation. But we're talking about people who don't know whether or what's being generated, whether it's right or wrong, or the problems it can bring. And so this is where I also lean towards what Dave was saying. And one of the things we're trying to do better at where I work is an apprenticeship model, because there are significant concerns, especially we don't know where any of these programs are going to go in colleges and school. And when young people come out and want to work and they're given Claude Code or whatever the case may be, or whatever the context might be, not understanding the internals and having somebody who can kind of guide and show them the way things should work. So there are a lot of factors here. Of course, if you've been in this industry for a long time, there's a level of gatekeeping that we just do because of, it doesn't matter what you've done. Even if you've been a application engineer for years, you just don't appreciate people coming in and beginning to do your job because of the battle scars that you bear. That's where I think we're going to have to find that sweet spot, or it's a constant negotiation we're going to be in. But the technology is here until it does something that really causes problem, and then we'll do something different at that point. Oh yeah, we're on. I mean, we haven't even solved the problem about how these companies are going to function, how they're going to run. Like, no one's talking about that. Anthropic is, in conversations now about a consumption model over their subscription model, because they've realized, like, subscription model, they just can't survive that way. So they're going to have to switch to a consumption model. But what that's going to look like, that's a completely different conversation, but a lot of unanswered questions.
I think we can cap it there for now, let people get to lunch. I know there's more discussion that needs to occur, which can happen at lunch and can happen at open spaces. As part of the point is to prompt y'all to get ideas to pitch during open spaces and continue the thoughts from the morning. My take is 10 years ago, a big competitive advantage for me was I knew the terminal, I knew Bash, and I was into containers. That's still true today. My primary client right now, I'm helping them with a new containerization initiative. So the future is not evenly distributed. And I think we can close there. Let's hear it for the panelists, folks.